Hi guys, my name's Dav and welcome to D&DGaming. In for review this time around is space adventure game Tacoma. Reviewing the game with me is my brother Dale.
Hi guys, Tacoma is a space adventure game developed and published by Fullbright Game Studios and released on multiple platforms in 2017. Playing as Amy Ferrier, you are assigned by Venturis Corporation to board the abandoned lunar orbiting space station called Tacoma and retrieve data from each part of the station, and in the process build a picture of what happened to the ship's crew 3 days prior to your arrival. So what were your first impressions of the game?
First impressions, space adventure game. I thought it was going to be right up my alley. I like sort of space station setting, and the idea of piecing together the sort of data, find out what happened as you go along.
Prior to actually playing it, I think I'd seen it before when I got it for free through the Epic Games store. Picked it up on one of the free ones they were doing, and I think I'd looked into it, just Googled it to see what it was about. And yeah, again, I like the idea of being on the space station, and it looked like it was going to be something a bit different. I knew it was going to be a story-driven game, but didn't know entirely what to expect. Again, I think the pictures I'd seen, it showed the kind of this augmented reality stuff that we'll talk about later, but yeah, I like the idea of it being on the space station, and so that drew me to it. And in terms of playing through, what were your thoughts on the first playthrough?
Yeah, I mean, I know this game's got a lot of positive reviews, and I really wanted to like this game, but I just couldn't get into it story-wise. It just didn't grip me and engage me enough, and I know I'll get slated on the comments for this, but because it's got, I say, a lot of positive reviews, people raving about the story and sort of the way it's intertwined and things. But yeah, I mean, I'm not against walking simulators at all, but I think they do need to be very story driven. And I mean, yeah, for the first part of it, I thought it was a floating simulator as you sort of like float around for that first part of sort of getting into the station, but left mouse button clicker. And I mean, the most fun I had playing the game was trying and failing to sit on the toilet with an acoustic guitar. What do you think?
Again, I knew it was going to be this kind of story-based, walking simulator, as you say, which they've got. I guess there's quite a divide with these kind of walking simulator games. Some people love them, some people hate them, and I've played a lot actually. I guess probably more than you actually. I guess if we're being honest, and I already knew Fullbright from having played Gone Home, which was their 2013 game. I was reading a little bit about Fullbright actually, and actually a really small team. I believe there's only about 8 members of staff, so you've got to bear that in mind. With we're not talking AAA type levels of investment here. There's a pretty small team, and this is, I believe, it was their second game, no doubt they've got another one in development at the moment. But so I played Gone Home, and I really enjoyed that. And that, again, you need to know what you're getting with these games. Going into it, as long as you know it's a kind of walking simulator, and I knew that with Gone Home, and I knew that with this, I knew what to expect in terms of this. They're going to be slow. You're going to take your time. You're going to want to look at a lot of stuff and almost read everything to get familiar with what story they're actually trying to tell. You can't just blast through it, and it's not really, they're not like fast-paced action games. And again, so I played a lot of these. I played right back to Dear Esther, which was one of the first. That was started as a mod, and that was a great game. Firewatch a few years ago, loved that as well, just for the setting. Again, the story, well, I won't go into that, but I did enjoy the game. And others like What Remains of Edith Finch and Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. I played all of those, and I do like them, because I go into them thinking, right, okay, I've had a long day at work. I don't want something that's going to be some fast-paced action game or whatever. I just want to relax into it. And I think if you know that, you can just really appreciate the setting. But there has to be something that really grips you. Like you say, the story obviously has to grip you, but the setting for me as well. So what I found with Dear Esther is a really great setting on a remote Scottish island, and the setting itself has to really grip you in these games, along with the story. And so in terms of being set on the space station, I haven't played any like that before, so it did grip me in that way. And I think there was a strong story to it. So what did you think in terms of graphic options?
There's a few options. Texture quality, anti-aliasing, FOV slider. It was a typical stuff, really.
Yeah, I found the options menu was pretty limited, but again, these sort of games, you're not expecting too much. I did find I did have to adjust the FOV slider, and I found it a little bit annoying. It was literally just a slider. So a lot of games you can actually set it to what you want. So if you want 95, for example, you can click it and it sets it where you want it. Whereas this, I found you just slide and you don't know where you're at. So if you like, which some people do, a specific field of view like 90, 95, you can't actually set it. You just have to find where it is. But apart from that, there wasn't an awful lot, but didn't expect it. And
I'm running on a i7 8700K with 32 gig of RAM and a GTX 1080, and my monitor's a 1080p monitor, so it ran well. They've on sort of maximum with everything switched on, graphics wise, which is to be expected, with that kind of spec.
Yeah, I'm running on a i5 4670K, pretty old CPU now, with 16 gig RAM and RTX 2070, but I'm running a 1440p. But again, no issues. I pretty much max on everything, and ran pretty well.
What do you think? So the graphics performance, it's built in the Unity engine. I thought the graphics were, well, nothing to write home about, but pretty good. There was nothing that stood out necessarily, but nothing that I thought was particularly bad. It ran, like I say, ran well on my PC with no noticeable frame drops or anything. And one thing I thought was quite cool in terms of the graphics was I don't know if you've done this, but like looking out of the windows in certain sections, it sort of really felt like you're sort of on a rotating sort of space station, to sort of create that artificial gravity. Quite disorientating as well, but quite realistic at the same time.
Yeah, I found the same actually. I thought the graphics were, they were fine. Again, some of the walking simulator games really focus on the graphics because there's not much else that you're actually doing. It's not necessarily driven by the gameplay itself. So again, you need to focus on the graphics. And I thought they ran. Yeah, they look pretty good. I think the Unity engine, don't have much of an opinion on that. I've played games in Unity, which, there's some great games built in Unity. So no real kind of concerns there. But I did have a few jitters on. I found when transitioning between the different areas, you jump on that kind of device that takes you to the next section. And I did have a few stutters when going to those sections, but it was barely noticeable, so it wasn't an issue.
Yeah, and I thought the textures were fairly adequate sort of reflections and stuff. Really, lighting was fairly atmospheric in places as well. It's a first-person only game, and the main controls are keyboard and left and right mouse click. Not really sure about controllers. We're both PC gamers, so it's mouse and keyboard anyway. One problem I found with the left click being the main kind of interaction button, it became a problem when you're holding an object and you want to open a door, because I was holding an object and it ended up getting thrown into a closed door before then having to press the button again to open the door.
Yeah, it's a good point. I wouldn't say that caused me any issues, because I didn't find there was any points I had to kind of do both, like you say. But actually, yeah, it's a good point. They could have actually used a few more buttons, E and F. And
the story, I mean, what did you think of the structure and the mechanics of the game?
So I thought it was a good premise, actually, and it was an interesting concept. Again, no spoilers, but some really interesting points about the future and our kind of future in space and how AI might play a part of that. And I genuinely thought the story was really well done. You know, it talked about those huge corporations, and actually it mentioned by name a couple, and I thought it was really interesting, the idea that, you know, we've already got these huge corporations, and how in the future, you know, as we expand into space, this idea of implementing AI as well into these space stations, you know, it really is interesting how we have to be careful about that in these huge corporations, get a grasp on that, and who's going to control certain, you know, like space stations, who's going to have control over space in that way. And I think if you put it in the hands of these companies, then it's risky. So the main issue I had is that I didn't really care much for the characters themselves. I mean, they were likable enough, but again, in these sort of games, you need really strong characters. So yeah, I didn't really feel I was really drawn to them.
Yeah, well, that was my main issue with the game, really. I think I just didn't find the characters convincing enough to be space station scientists to me. I mean, listen to this.
What's so bad about these people? Well, they live in a tin can, for one thing.
I think it's a pretty nice can.
Oh, you have a pretty nice can.
Oh, yeah? Well, I think you have a pretty nice can. Shut up.
But one thing I did like is that it wasn't hand-holding in any way. There was no sort of hints popping up in your face all the time, or sort of flashing objects, you know, telling you where to go or press this button or pick this up. And I did like that about the game. You know, I think when you've got something that's not hand-holdy, there's not things flashing, it makes you as a player interact more and move around more and look for things, look for what you need to do next in that game. So I think that was something I did really like about that. The flip side, I mean, one thing, the intertwined sort of sub-stories during the data streams, where you've got sort of NPCs walking off in different directions and you're having to kind of chase them around and sort of re-listen to certain parts of the data streams multiple times so you didn't sort of miss anything. I thought that just got a bit monotonous, you know. Oh, those two have gone off in that direction. Oh, I've got to go back, restart that data stream to then follow those two people instead. So I don't know whether parts like that of the game could have been done slightly better.
Yeah, I kind of agree, where it took me a little while to actually get to grips with, okay, what we got here, we've got multiple things going on, I need to listen to that, and then better, like you say, you're rewinding sometimes. And I mean, I like that in a way, because
it was different,
the different people's stories, and you've got to go over there and listen to, what did they say while these two were doing this? And again, you get a bigger picture, but you do need to be switched on in terms of, there's a lot to look at as well. You know, there's points where you've got to read a lot of information, and you've got to, you know, sometimes you're not in the mood for just sitting there. You know, you almost want to play a game just to zone out. Whereas if you want to get the whole story, you've really got to, in this game, like, read almost everything, because there's a lot going on with their sub-stories. So yeah, I definitely agree. There's a lot of messing about, going back and forth with the recordings.
Yeah, and I think in terms of like picking objects up, you know, I just found that, I mean, it's a walking simulator, so obviously in a lot of those type of games, you are just picking things up, looking at things in detail, that kind of stuff, spinning around, you know, zooming in and out and things, but I just found like 99.999% of them were just of no use.
Sometimes it's too much. Yeah, there's like too much stuff.
There was too much stuff, and I guess probably the flip side of it not being handholdy with flashy objects telling you what's important and what's not is when you've got so many objects, you're not really sure what's important and what's not. I just found myself getting a little bit bored with certain sections, especially when I wasn't finding the NPCs particularly convincing. So then I was just throwing stuff around in the background while the data stream was playing. So what did you think of the sounds in the game?
I thought there was actually good voice actors that they chose for the parts, to be honest.
This is all crazy.
But you said you...
I know. I know what I... But what was I supposed to say? You all pressured me.
Andrew.
They really expect us to climb into some jury-rigged thing and ride it through space? Just because VT might not come pick us up. It's insane.
The sound generally, I mean, yeah, not much to say on that, to be honest. It was fine.
Yeah, I mean, I thought voice acting, personally, I didn't think they were that great. I think the voice actors themselves weren't bad, but I didn't think they necessarily, as I said earlier, I think fitted well with the narrative of the game.
Yeah, sure.
The space station science side of things, but generally I thought there was nothing to write home about really with the sound. Nothing stood out. It was generally fairly basic. Did you find any bugs or glitches in the game?
No, I think as I mentioned earlier, apart from this slight stuttering when transitioning between the areas, but it was nothing major and certainly no bugs at all, so no issues there.
Yeah, I didn't find any sort of bugs or glitches particularly. To sum up, I mean, things I liked about the game, I like the idea of the game storyline. I quite like the atmospheric sort of feel to it. Really felt like you were on an orbital space station. Didn't feel like it was particularly handholdy, no flashing objects, that kind of stuff, and was sort of more player driven in focus in terms of where you're going at any one point, even though generally the game was fairly linear. And I thought the AR desktop was quite cool to kind of interact with.
So in terms of what I liked about it, I did actually like the story and the idea behind this AI future in space, and I thought that the setting was really good, and just generally thought for this type of walking simulator game that it kind of ticked all the boxes really. So what are the things you didn't like about the game?
I think the controls could have been improved. More buttons would have driven better interaction, I think, with the environment. I know it's a walking simulator and they tend to have less buttons. I think that really could have driven that better interaction with the environment and the storyline, I think, as well. Lack of usable objects meant that, everything could be picked up, but only just kind of viewed, really, and not necessarily interacted with. I didn't feel the story was particularly well executed. It felt just stop-starty with the fact of NPCs running off in different directions and having to come back to certain sections of data streams and stuff. And it was fairly repetitive, and like I said already, the lack of convincing NPCs, in my personal opinion, to drive the story along. And I just didn't feel it was engaging enough for me. And I think for a walking sim game, it's the single most important thing it needs to be for the player. And I know others will say it is interactive, but for me, or engaging, but for me, it didn't feel particularly engaging.
So do you think there's anything that could have been added or anything you would like to have seen in the game?
If the NPCs had been actual people rather than just the sort of coloured shapes and sort of pictures that you see and that pop up on sort of ID cards or paperwork or whatever on the AR desktop within the game, it would have helped to draw me more into the characters, I think. They could have still been ghost-like, as obviously the story is meant to be this, you're picking up on AI data and a memory of a situation that's already happened. So they could still be sort of have that sort of ghost look to them. But with actual faces and expressions and things, I think it would have drawn me into the characters more. Having said that, I don't think I would have wanted to see the expression on the faces of the two women talking about one of their asses.
Shut up.
So overall, what would you score this game?
I'll give it a 6 out of 10. How about you?
Probably a bit lower. I think 5 out of 10.
Fair enough.
For me. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment, and we'll see you in the next one.